One of the sure test ways to find out if a restaurant's frauding you, scamming you, tricking you, lying to you, is if they're telling you they're at Hello, Chef Marcus Guiliano here, and I'm your chef on a mission. Today's mission is salmon. Farm salmon, wild salmon. What's farmed? What's wild? Where's it from? Atlantic, Pacific, what's the deal? I'm going to read and answer a comment from my YouTube channel. It was on one of the videos how a restaurant was deceiving people. I believe this was in Boca Raton. This restaurant was deceiving people. I called them, pointed out that they were wrong. I don't know if they ever changed their menu, but I called them out on it on the phone, and I made a little video about them as well. So here's somebody's commenting. Bill Brennan. Well, I happen to know for an absolute fact that wild Atlantic salmon exists. And how do you know they don't have their own fishermen? Some upscale seafood restaurants actually do have their own fishing operation. So now, Bill is making a comment here because one of the sure test ways to find out if a restaurant's frauding you, scamming you, tricking you, lying to you, is if they're telling you their Atlantic salmon is wild. Because you really can't get Atlantic salmon in restaurants. It doesn't exist. So Bill here is saying he knows for a fact that wild Atlantic salmon exists. And he's right. That's totally true. Wild Atlantic salmon does exist. However, it's really not available for commercial use. Okay, it's actually on the endangered list, species list in some places. There's a very, very, very small regions of Scotland, Norway, where you can actually catch wild Atlantic salmon. But for commercial trade, I mean, you can, first of all, you can catch the salmon throughout, Canada, St. Lawrence, stuff like that. It's out there. It's out there, you can catch it. But available commercially for a restaurant to serve it, that almost virtually does not exist. If you were to do that, if a restaurant were to do that, they'd have to pay really high dollar from an operation in Scotland that's wild catching or Norway. What I mean by high dollar is, so I spoke to Alistair from the Seafood Connection in Scotland this last spring, and had a great conversation with him because he gets wild Scottish salmon, the real deal wild Scottish salmon. He gets that in his operation to sell. But now here's the thing. He told me last year he got 4 fish. 4 fish, and they were 50 euro to 100 euro he was selling them for per pound, per kilo, 2.2 pounds. So that's $25 to $50 per pound whole fish. Now, whole fish, you clean it, you throw out 60% of it because you have to take the bones out, the head, you clean it up. So now you're basically doubling the price out. So basically for a fillet of wild Scottish salmon, it's costing between $50 and $100 per fillet, per side. Restaurants can't afford that. And he only got 4 fish. And this guy's connected. He goes, Marcus, he told me this, he goes, Marcus, the wild Scottish salmon is so decimated. Yeah, they have a quota system on a couple of the rivers here. They put the nets out at a certain time at night. They have to let so many swim upstream to spawn and then swim back, and then they're allowed to catch. Well, the fish don't really swim back. They go up there and they die. Salmon is an amazing species that goes back to the same spot there where it spawns, where it was born, where the eggs were laid, and goes back to that exact same spot, spawns and dies. And because there's such an abundant population in parts of the world like Alaska, used to be British Columbia as well, abundant populations, the salmon farms have destroyed that. The fish die, the fish go off for food, for bears, they decompose, they add nitrogen, they add a bunch of elements to the environment that is totally necessary. However, once the fish start swimming upstream, okay, they stop eating. Salmon has a lot of fat. They build up a lot of fat content. The salmon knows how far it has to swim upstream. They stop eating once they enter the mouth of the river, and they start eating their own fat reserves to go spawn, and then they die. So once the salmon swims up, the salmon, they call it spent salmon. The First Nations in Canada or the natives in Alaska, they won't eat fish. They won't eat spent salmon because it's not the high quality. It's not the good quality. So Alistair told me that sport fishermen, bankers, hedge fund guys will pay 10 grand to go upstream and sit there and catch a couple fish. And he goes, Marcus, the wild stuff, the very few wild stuff that comes through goes for royalty. It's a royalty fish. It's not something that restaurants buy. It's not something that gets exported or imported to the U.S. He goes, the Norwegian stuff is a few bucks cheaper a pound when you can get it. He goes, I almost got a little bit this year. He goes, but it's just stuff you can't sell. So yes, Bill is right. 100% there is wild Atlantic salmon out there, 100%. And he is right that some restaurants do contract with fishing operations. And they might catch exclusively or get first pick of the catch that's caught on these boats. However, there are no boats fishing the Atlantic Ocean. There are no fishermen fishing the Atlantic Ocean for restaurants. It's not something that you can catch commercially. Again, the population is just too low. That's because fish farms have come in and decimated everything because the germs, the feces, the viruses, the bacteria all spreads into the wild. The wild salmon swim past the farm when they're little tiny fray to when they're big fish, and the diseases spread out, the lice spread out, and it cross-contaminates and it kills off the wild population. That's why the wild population is in such critical shape, because the salmon farms are just doing damage, and that's why salmon farms are getting evicted out of most parts of the world where they operate, okay? Whether it's New Zealand, Tasmania, Australia, British Columbia, Washington State, salmon farms are coming to a cease at a lot of these places because the local governments are saying 30 years of this is enough, guys. You've destroyed our oceans, you've destroyed our wild stocks. So, again, Bill is right. There's wild salmon out there, but you're not getting it in a restaurant commercially. If Alistair were to ship some of that to the U.S., you'd have to add on freight charges. So you're probably going to, the little bit that could get shipped over is probably almost going to double in price. And there's not many chefs that are willing at all, not even Thomas Keller, to pay something like that when you can get the real deal wild Alaskan salmon at 25 pounds a buck whole fish when the Copper River breaks, that season comes, and then price will come down a little bit as the season goes into season, and you might be able to get fillets for 15 bucks a pound. So restaurants going to be much more willing to do that than overspend on this other money. So Bill, I hope that answers your question in a respectful way, because yes, you are right, but this place here or any place that you go to that says the Atlantic salmon is wild, 99.9 repeating, that's not the case. It's just not, it's not happening. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. Thanks for watching. If you like my videos, please hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, pass it on, and or a question I'll be happy to answer.